I apologize for the late episode. We have been busy, and also we forgot that it was Mother's Day this past Sunday. We apologize for the late episode, but I hope you enjoy this little episode we pieced together about a interesting musical. And for any future delays, or if you want to keep up with what's going on, you can go ahead and follow us on Twitter at KleioHistory, and it can give you updates on exactly what's going on in our lives. If we're going to be late, if we have an episode, and see any weird tweets we put out. All right, to the episode.
Hello and welcome back to the KleioCast, episode 18, where we're not actually going to tell you what this one's going to be about yet, even though you can read the title of it because it's a surprise. I'm RC.
And I'm Matt.
And we have a special guest today who knows things about theater that we don't.
Hello, I'm Kelly.
With that, we're going to get right into the episode.
Now, based off this episode's name, you might think it's about the 2008 stock market crash, but actually it's about the play or musical SpiderMan Turn Off the Dark that premiered in 2011. Now, the problem that I personally have is I know nothing about musicals or plays or anything about Broadway, which is why we need an expert. And that's who we have today. So we're going to go ahead and let Kelly do a bit of the talking, and we'll ask questions throughout this. So, Kelly, could you please introduce us to what exactly is a musical?
Well, if you're one of the few people out there who don't know what a musical is like a play, live performance, except it has dance numbers and singing. Yep.
Okay, yeah, that was kind of a dumb question, but let's go ahead and get into the main topic. So around 2002, from our research done, the Spider-Man movie came out, and there was a lot of hype around Spider-Man, but there was also a parallel to the movie, which was the theatrical production of this. Could you give us some details about the early life of Spider-Man, the musical?
So the movie came out in May of 2002, and then following the success of that film, Marvel announced in August of 2002 that Tony Adams was going to produce a Spider-Man musical. Unfortunately, after getting a team together for this musical, Adams has a stroke in October of 2005, and 2 days after that, dies. Despite this setback, the creative team that he had brought together decides to move on with the project anyways. Adam's partner, David Garfinkel, he takes over for the production of this musical, and he doesn't know much about producing a musical. He's an entertainment lawyer. So he decides to leave the creative part of the production, and, well, most of the production, in the hands of the director that was hired on by Adams, Julie Taymor.
Now, I know absolutely nothing about musicals or Broadway, but Julie Taymor is a name that sounds familiar. Would it be possible for you to go into exactly who she is or why I know her name? But also, why are they getting an entertainment lawyer to do this? That doesn't seem like a recipe for success. I mean, sure, he's probably a good lawyer, but is he really a good producer to put together a musical?
To address that second question, I do not know why David Garfinkel got involved. I don't know who he is. He just did. As for who Julie Taymor is, she is the creative mind behind The Lion King. For anyone who has seen The Lion King, well, you know what makes her so great. For any of you who haven't, The Lion King, the Broadway production, is an artistic masterpiece. And, at first thought, Julie Taymor is an amazing director to bring on for this. But there's one problem. Julie Taymor works great under supervision and restriction. Giving her full control over the musical without any oversight, I mean, she's a perfectionist, so they were already setting themselves up for failure, but that comes later. So anyways,
I guess my big question for right now is, why a musical? Like, I get that Spider-Man's popular and all that, but why not like a play or something? Why does it have to have music?
Because Broadway brings in money. And Broadway only does musicals, not plays. Next question.
Well, I guess that answers that question. But I guess another thing I'm wondering is, like, I mean, it's just a musical. It can't be that expensive, right? Like, I get that they have to, like, license Spider-Man from Sony. But other than that, like, how much would this thing even cost?
Well, the usual cost for a Broadway musical, or the usual budget, is somewhere between $5 and $15 million. This musical is different. Let's go over the timeline real quick. In 2007, they begin readings for the musical, and that gets delayed. And by 2009, they're already $25 million in debt.
Wait, so in 2 years, they've lost not only all their money, but they're $20 million in the hole? Like, how does that even happen?
I'm not 100% sure how it happened, but my guess would be that, they're still paying the creative team on this. And that creative team is stacked. Like, I already mentioned Julie Taymor. On this creative team as well is Bono and The Edge doing the music. You've got Daniel... apologies for my mispronunciations real quick. Daniel Ezralo. He's in charge of the choreography for this show, and he actually did the choreography for Cats the Musical, which, if you haven't seen the musical production of Cats, the whole emphasis of the show is on the dancing. So there's that. And then they got George Tispin, for the set. He's an amazing sculptor, and he's only done like 2 other shows, but I highly recommend, if you get the chance, look up his production of West Side Story. Beautiful set. Then you have Iko Ishioka. I think I'm saying that right. She did the costumes, and she's very well known in film. I mean, she's Academy Award winning. But yeah, no, she's super talented. And then you got Tony Award winning Donald Holder, who does lighting design. I mean, this is a really stacked production crew. So paying them alone for 2 years, yeah, it's not that surprising they ended up $26 million in debt. Not to mention things like rights and other stuff they might have to pay for.
They got Bono, like Bono from U2. Well, okay, so this is looking up. Other than it taking 2 years, if you have so many professionals in a room working on something, I don't understand how this could not be a success. This thing is designed, although it's taking a while. You have masters of the craft working on a situation that really, like, it's incomprehensible that this could ever go wrong. So, like, but we know, for the whole point of this story, is it does have problems. Where do those start, other than with the taking 2 years and some financial issues?
And that brings us back to Julie Taymor. Yes. So being unsupervised, nobody held her that closely to the source material. And being the creative mind that she is, she wanted to implement some stuff that isn't in the comics. To summarize her vision and her version of the script, her original version, the show opens with Arachne, the weaver who was turned into a spider by Athena, gifting her powers to Peter Parker and calling him to be Spider-Man, falling in love with him, getting upset that he doesn't reciprocate that love, and then turning into a villain who wants to destroy the world, or no, steal everyone's shoes. That's what it is. Steal everyone's shoes because Spider-Man won't date her. That's a very rough summary, but I'm not exaggerating anything.
What? Arachne. So they have a, like, Greek myth giving powers to Peter Parker and stealing shoes. This lady did Lion King. Okay, well, Kelly, continue, but that seems a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, again, Lion King was such a success because Disney didn't allow her to mess too much with the script. Again, this is where Spider-Man fails in that she had too much creative freedom and nobody holding her to the source material. But moving forward, yeah, that script, it wasn't good. When critics saw the show, they panned it. It was bad. Some saying it ranked among the worst musicals ever written. And at some point, Julie Taymor was fired. And an attempt was made to fix the script, but with money being already spent on the set and costumes and there being no room in the budget to change much, the revisions had to follow with what was already laid out in terms of scenery, costumes, flying, and whatnot. And you went from what was a really bad show to what critics called boring. Yeah, their revisions made the show go from interestingly bad to just boringly okay, I guess. And that's just part of what made the show such a flop.
So, I mean, it's probably not often that such a, important and big person in the industry like Julie Taymor, from what you've said, gets fired. But, I mean, I guess it seems justified. But still, this thing still hasn't gone out to general audiences on Broadway yet, from my understanding, from where we're at in the story. It's just been panned by critics. So, I mean, how much is this costing, since they have to rewrite the entire thing? And two, the thing that I know about the Spider-Man musical in general is its injuries and its flair for the fantastic stunts of people swinging around the theater. What exactly goes on with both the cost overruns and also, the swinging around the theater?
You're right that it hasn't gone out to the public yet, but it's not just poor reviews working against this show. There's also the very bad publicity. This show was in the media for injuries often. In total, there were about 6 different people injured during the lead up to the premiere. You had at least 2 different stunt doubles got hurt while flying. One of the stunt doubles broke his wrist while flying. Another stunt double broke their foot in the exact same flying routine. The New York State Department of Labor actually came in February 2011 and cited 2 different workplace safety violations. And the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, also known as OSHA, came in March 2011 and fined them $12,600 for 3 serious safety violations.
Are injuries to be expected, and is that it for injuries? I mean, I know there's the one famous one, which I will get into, but are there any more, or do they increase drastically? Also, I mean, Kelly, would you be able to go into a bit more about exactly how the set was set up and designed?
I mean, injuries are to be expected in most theater productions, but nothing of this caliber just because of the amount of flying that was in it. Flying always makes things a bit more dangerous. And I mean, this show was mostly flying. Add on to that, the set was designed to move. I mean, this was probably the most technical show to ever hit Broadway. There was a lot of moving pieces, a lot of large moving pieces, and that led to more injuries than usual. It also doesn't help that injuries made it out to the public. Usually, theaters try to do their best to keep that stuff in-house. Otherwise, you get a big game of telephone. For example, I had a theater professor tell me she had a friend who was working on the show, and as she left the theater, she was bombarded by reporters asking her about one of the injuries and assuming that someone had died, and she didn't know anything because she was simply a lighting crew member. And yeah, those reports made things harder on the production team.
Wait, but did they die?
No one died. But we had 2 major injuries happen. One of them a little bit less severe than the other. The first one I'm talking about is Natalie Mendoza. She got a concussion from equipment in the wings. She didn't report it at first and tried to just keep doing the show, but some of the aerial stunts that she was supposed to perform, it caused it to get worse, and she had to pull out from the show. Daniel Curry, he got pinned under a piece of equipment and suffered from leg trauma. And the big one that most people know about, if they know anything about this show, is Christopher Tierney. During the December 20th, 2010 performance in front of a live audience, Christopher Tierney, who was the stunt double for SpiderMan, fell 21 feet from the stage into the pit, breaking 4 vertebrae, 4 ribs, fracturing his elbow, his scapula, and his skull. Despite all of this, he came back in April of 2011 to continue working on the show after doctors released him.
I am speechless. 1, that he was able to come back, but 2, the gross negligence that resulted in such an extreme injury. That is, wow. I mean, I know this is an audio medium, but I am speechless. I have no idea what to say. That is the famous injury, but I didn't know it was that bad. And clearly there was issues with the production. But honestly, like, did it even make back any money, or were there any like lawsuits or issues financially because of this, incident?
Yeah, no, I mean, before I move on, back to the budget and stuff, all the money stuff of this show, I want to read off a quote from Tierney after the accident. In an interview with ABC News, he said, "I went out for the jump. I'm contained by my tether, and that's why I'm always, it will stop me. And so I always go for it. I didn't factor in somebody's mistake, back there. And so, yes, I took a dive, but it was worth it." So anyways, going back to that $25 million in debt in 2009, around the same time, Disney was aiming to buy Marvel, but of course they offered no help to the Broadway production. Granted, this gets stated in a lot of accounts of why this musical failed, and I think it kind of ignores the fact that Disney, despite wanting to buy Marvel, they wouldn't have access to Spider-Man because of Sony, but, whatever. It always gets brought up. And also, at some point, Bono brings in Michael Cole to produce. This is at some point, I think, after Julie Taymor leaves. So in 2010, Cole is able to raise the funds for them to continue to produce. And then by November of 2010, there's $65 million in debt. And they continue to delay the show to fix things and whatnot. And by the time you get to that 2011 opener, you're $75 million down. And this doesn't even account for the running cost being $1 million per week to run this show. And there's a general guess as to what, like, that money, where it was distributed. The best guess I could find was somebody stating that $9.7 million was spent on set and costumes, $4.4 million was spent to rent out the theater for 2 years, $2.2 million was for flying equipment, and again, like I said before, the $1.3 million to run the show every week.
I also find it entertaining that Bono is the one leading the charge on this thing. The Irish singer and songwriter and frontman of U2 is a part of a SpiderMan musical. It's entertaining. But Kelly, please go on exactly the financial issues of this play.
Yeah, so with those numbers, in hindsight, we know that they were never going to make that back. But within their first full week of running, they had the highest box office gross on Broadway at $1.5 million. Now, ticket sales improved during the summer, and a lot of the audience members who were seeing this show were actually foreign tourists. And it earned about $100,000 to $300,000 in net income each week. But doing the math with that means it would have to continue playing for at least 5 years just to break even. And it didn't keep up those numbers, as sales declined in the last week of September in 2013. And on November 19th of 2013, producers announced that the show would be closed on January 4th of 2014. That show ran for 3 years on Broadway, failing to make back its $75 million cost, meaning that it reportedly lost about $60 million.
So is this like a producer's thing, like a Mel Brooks joke where they're just trying to lose money for some money laundering situation, or as a tax fraud thing? Because that's Mel Brooks wrote the producers basically to show that you could make money by losing money to make fun of Broadway. Is that is this one of those situations?
To my knowledge, no. There's nothing I found online that indicates this at all. It was just a colossal failure. And again, to put this back into perspective, the second highest budget for a Broadway musical ever is Shrek the Musical at $25 million. It's not even half of the SpiderMan budget. It's an anomaly that I don't think anyone could reproduce if they wanted to.
Well, this is tragic. Seems like it had a lot of potential, and really it just turned out to be a failure. And that's what you should look out for if you're ever in New York City, is to make sure that whatever play you're going to is going to be the next Spider-Man. But over this little recording session, RC has developed some theories about why this play actually flopped, and we're going to go ahead and let him take it away.
Well, I guess just my general thinking is you got this play that's coming out around 2008, 2010. What also debuted in 2008 to 2010? Well, the Great Recession, right? And that's my theory, is that I think that this show, half the reason it did so poorly in box office numbers was not only that it was written poorly, but also that a lot of people were suddenly unemployed, right? So all of a sudden you got all these people that don't have the disposable income to go to a nice Broadway show, and they don't want to go to some fun poppy, Spider-Man show, because they're not feeling that happy. They got to go see Thor in theaters instead and get depressed. That's what I'm thinking. Now, is there any merit at all to my theory? Because I'm going to write a book about it.
Okay, one, actually, I would have loved to been one of the few people to see that while it was on Broadway. And two, yeah, that theory doesn't hold water. Why? Because one, I've checked the numbers, and Broadway, all the other shows that debuted on Broadway around the same time as Spider-Man did just fine. It was just Broadway, or it was just SpiderMan. And two, the type of people who see Broadway shows, like on Broadway, they weren't the ones hit by the recession as hard. So money isn't an object to them. They literally go to see Broadway shows.
So I guess the one last question I have is, have there been any other attempts to kind of break the record for large budget? Because I know that movies just keep getting more and more and more expensive. Like every year it seems like the budgets get larger and larger and the pays get larger and larger. Like Endgame made like $2 billion. Is Broadway going the same way? Like, are we going to at some point get a Broadway play musical that has a budget larger than this?
Absolutely not. So far, the lessons that Broadway has learned is if it has a really big budget, it's probably not going to do well. A lot of Broadway's highest budget musicals just don't do well. And while I'm not 100% sure as to why, my guess would be that a lot of those big budget musicals put a lot of their money into the technical side, but they're doing it in such a way that usually they're filling in the gaps for the writing and the songs. And the number one thing that can destroy a musical is bad writing and bad musical numbers. If people don't like your music, or if people don't like the story of the show they're watching, they're not going to watch it, no matter how cool your special effects are.
So, I mean, I guess it's just the special effects is for the movies. It's for a new Spider-Man movie. It's for a new Marvel movie. It's not for a Broadway play, right?
That's the thing. It can work in Broadway. There's plenty of shows out there that are constantly on Broadway because of the technical aspects of them, but they're not doing the heavy lifting on their own. They're partnered with good writing, good music. So, I mean, really, the moral of the story here is that you can't just put all your budget into, like, set and costumes and lighting unless you have a good story and good music to support it. Because at the end of the day, that's what musicals are about, and that's what theater's about. It's about the stories and the music, and everything else is secondary.
Well, that's all I have on this horrific disaster that is Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. And I'd like to thank Kelly for being here with us. And Kelly, do you have any closing remarks?
I just want to thank you guys for having me on. And there are a few different unions that if you want to support theaters that you can support, there's IATSE, which is for the tech side, and then there is Actors Equity, which is for the stage actors and stage managers. And if you have the chance, go out to your local theater and watch a show. Support live theater, especially after everything that's happened in the past few years. Theater has been struggling to open back up, and they could use your support right now. So I think that's it.
Once again, I'd like to thank Kelly. This is our first subject matter expert on the podcast. If you want to see more of that, go ahead and you can tweet it at us at KleioHistory. You can email us at kleiohistorypodcast@gmail.com, or you can go ahead and follow us anywhere else that you might see us, like on Acast or anywhere else you find your podcasts. This has been the KleioCast. I've been Matt.
And I've been RC.
And I have been Kelly.
And this has been the KleioCast about Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. Thank you.